Hey everyone, it's me, Scarlett. I'm kind of doing this like vlog AUTHORTUBE tag thing today. I wasn't really planning on doing a vlog this week, but I was tagged in an AUTHORTUBE tag personally, so I figure I should at least address that. So the original tag is from Joey Paul, and I will include the link in my description box below to that video, but then I was personally tagged by Tania Stephanson, so if you want to check out her video, you can also check that out in the link in the description box below. So what is this tag, you ask? This tag is when and how did the writing bug bite you? Well, for me, it was actually twice. I don't know if I have a very tasty brain or something, but that bug has hit me basically twice in my life and has started me down various different paths. The first time it bit me was probably about 15, 16 years old. I was a very, very avid reader at this point. I grew up in Northern Manitoba, and at that point, the internet was very fact-based. You know, we don't really have Amazon. We're not ordering books all the time. So I spent a lot of time at the library. And I believe there was maybe like one bookstore where I could get things from at that point. So I had started as an earlier teen reading Christopher Pike books. I really, really enjoyed that kind of horror teen kind of novel. And I just devoured everything he ever had. And then this movie was coming out that starred both Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. So that just sent my little teen heart aflutter because I was a massive Brad Pitt fan. And to be honest, me and my best friend, we actually used to celebrate Tom Cruise's birthday on July 3rd every year with a Tom Cruise movie marathon. That kind of stopped as we got a little bit older and he got a little crazier. But we were so excited about this movie coming out. It involved the things that I absolutely love: Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, and vampires. I was in. So I started reading that book because I did like to read the book before the movie, and I fell in love with Anne Rice's writing. So I read the entire Vampire Chronicles, or all the ones that were available at the time. I then moved into the Mayfair Witches trilogy, and then into The Mummy or Ramses the Damned, Feast of All Saints, anything I could get my hands on that was written by Anne Rice. So I really, really enjoyed that stuff. And then one night I had this dream. It was a very vivid dream, and I was actually the narrator in the dream, which was a little bit unusual. And I remembered, when I woke up, I actually remembered everything. And I remember that this dream was very, like, it was almost like I was speaking the whole thing. Like I was reading a book out loud, which was something that was totally different, and the fact that I actually remembered it was a complete shock. And no surprise, it was a vampire love story. It starred a vampire named Devin. I had picked the name Devin because it turns out that Devin means poet, and he was a very broody and melancholy vampire, and it's a love story between him and obviously another character in Paris. So that was really exciting. It was a historical piece, big surprise. I was an Anne Rice fan, kind of fits. However, I do write mainly contemporary now, so obviously I have evolved over time. But at this one, it was a period piece taking place in Paris during the Renaissance. And so we had Devin. I can't remember her name, to be completely honest with you. And the next day I sat down with loose leaf paper and I wrote out the entire novella as much as I could. I can't remember exactly how long it was, but it was definitely longer than a short story. And it was great. There was a lot of things about it that I really, really liked. It was probably complete trash if I read it again, but unfortunately I don't have a copy of it anymore. And that point, I just kept writing. I started writing short stories. I started entering them into contests, and I was winning contests there that I'm not even really sure how that happened, because I have read them since and I just cannot keep tents to save my life. But that's really what started me on writing. And then I moved away from my hometown and I went away to university. I took a couple of degrees, and then I got into a professional accounting designation. I built a house, I had children, I did all of those things. And then I'd really kind of forgotten about writing. I wrote some angsty poetry when I was in university, but nothing really concrete or story-like at all. And then as I was home with my infant son, my oldest, he was the worst sleeper in the world. And he used to keep me up at night until he was about 3 years old. And I would just kind of be in these like lucid kind of states where, you know, you're not really asleep, but you're not really awake. And I used to come up with these stories. And at that point, it was something that I struggled with because I was still imagining those things that I loved when I was a teenager. I was I grew up with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I read all that Anne Rice stuff. I loved vampires. I loved all of those things that were magical. Witches made me happy. I always watched Charmed. The Craft was really big when I was a teenager. So I always kind of had that sort of vision for things. However, when I started back into writing at this point, I had decided that this wasn't something I should be writing, because this was, you know, it was time to put away childish things and become an adult. And so I started working on a book that it was nice just to get back into writing something and to have characters' voices in my head again. And it was really great. And I really do like the story, and I think it would do really well as a women's fiction story. It was called Falling Off the Ladder, and it was about a woman who was really struggling with balancing corporate life and her relationships, and just her drive as a woman in a essentially male dominated type of field. And then she goes home to her hometown, and just kind of like how that all ties together. Anyway, that book never happened, because as much as I enjoyed writing again, I wasn't really feeling it, but I didn't really know that because I was so excited to be writing again. And then a friend of mine actually gave me the book Twilight. She said, I read this, I read it really quickly, I think it is something you would like. And I hadn't actually sat down to read a book for fun in a while, and I had actually been reading a lot more literary kind of stuff. I hadn't gone back to young adult books in a while. So she lends me this book. I eat through it in like no time. I actually read the entire series and the first like bit of Midnight Sun that was originally on Stephanie Meyer's website back in the day in like 3 days, and that included watching the movie. Fortunately, my husband was out of town, so it was very easy for me to do, and my son didn't sleep very well, so I had all of these midnight hours to burn. And it sparked something in me. Not so much the story itself, it was just more of the fact that all of those things that I loved about stories when I was a teenager and when I was a kid felt like they were coming back, and that it was okay to write the stories of my heart, because if that's really what I wanted to do, then that's what I should be doing. And I shouldn't be writing women's lit unless that is something that I really wanted to do, and I didn't. And so I sat down and I started writing this story called Hemorrhage. We'll see if it ever sees the light of day, but it was magical, and I was just totally drawn into that world. There were no vampires, but I was totally drawn into that world, and I realized that this is the stuff that I wanted to be writing, because as much as I enjoyed writing the other book, I think it was just the fact of writing and have that creative outlet that I was enjoying, but I never quite felt the passion for writing like I did once I started getting into Hemorrhage. Hemorrhage never did get finished. It's probably about like 95% of the way there in a first draft that probably needs to be like set on fire and rewritten. But I did start another book called Wicked Descent at that point. This idea just kind of came to me as I was helping a girlfriend pick out a gift for her boyfriend's mom for Christmas, and a Christmas song on the radio. I walked into my office, I had this idea, I sat down and I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. I didn't want to abandon the first project, I wanted to finish it first, but the voices of Avery and Drew just kept speaking to me, so I decided to go that way and see if I could kill some of that writer's block. All of a sudden I had a finished novel, and I moved on from there. So I was fortunate enough that the bug bit me twice, or it kind of maybe lay dormant through a period of my life and then came roaring back in my later 20s. So yeah, that answers the question for the AuthorTube tag. Thank you so much for Tania Stephanson for tagging me in this AuthorTube tag, and I hope you enjoyed my story. Thanks guys, and I hope you have a good week.